Case 3. The Murder of Dolores Della Penna. Dolores Marie Della Penna was born on December 13, 1954, in Tacony, Philadelphia. She was the second of two children born to Ralph and Helen Della Penna. Her father worked as a chemist, and her mother was a homemaker. The family lived in a semi-detached house in a working-class section of Tacony, an area made up mostly of Polish and Italian families. By the time she was 17, Dolores had grown into a kind and obedient young woman. She stood about 5'5" with long, dark hair and brown eyes. Friends and family called her by her nickname, D. In June 1972, she graduated with honors from St. Hubert Catholic High School for girls. Her parents were immensely proud. Just 1 month after receiving her diploma, Dee's life would be cut short in one of Philadelphia's most brutal and enduring unsolved murders. On the evening of July 11, 1972, Dee left her home in Tacony to visit friends. She was dressed casually in jeans and a shirt. It was a warm summer night, and young people were gathered on stoops and street corners to escape the heat trapped inside their row homes. According to witnesses, Dee was seen walking near her home around 10 o'clock that night. Then she vanished. Her parents grew concerned when she did not return home. By 1 o'clock in the morning, they called the Philadelphia police to report their daughter missing. A Juvenile Aid Division policewoman was sent to the house. She interviewed Ralph and Helen Della Penna. The circumstances did not feel like a runaway case. The officer was troubled. At dawn, the policewoman returned to the street in front of the Della Penna home. There, in the gutter, she discovered something chilling: Dee's necklace. Next to it were drops of blood. Neighbors were quickly interviewed. Several admitted they had seen or heard a disturbance on the street the previous evening around 10 o'clock. No one had called the police. One witness claimed to have seen a man loading what might have been a young woman into a car. The image was vague, the memory uncertain, but it was enough to confirm the worst. Dee had been abducted from right in front of her home. For 10 days, the Della Penna family waited. They prayed. They hoped. Then, on July 22, 1972, a man walking his dog through a wooded area near Oakwood Avenue in Jackson Township, New Jersey, made a horrific discovery. He found a mutilated torso and 2 severed arms. The remains were sent for examination, and fingerprints confirmed the worst. The body was Dolores Della Penna. 7 days later, on July 29, her legs were found beside a dirt road in adjacent Manchester Township, New Jersey. Both locations were close to Route 571 and separated by about 19 miles. Dee had been tortured, murdered, and dismembered. Her fingertips had been cut off to prevent identification. Her head was never found. The level of brutality shocked even seasoned investigators. Detectives from Philadelphia and the FBI launched a massive investigation. Over 1,500 people were questioned in the first 2 months alone. More than 150 suspects were brought in for interviews within the first week. Several failed polygraph tests. Many were involved in drug trafficking or use. But investigators found no evidence that Dee herself had used or sold drugs. She was, by all accounts, an innocent victim. Police believe the motive for her murder was connected to drugs, but not in the way most crimes are. One theory was that Dee had been falsely accused of stealing drugs by former roommates. Another theory suggested she had been targeted as revenge against her boyfriend over an unsettled drug debt. The truth remains unknown. Despite the thousands of interviews, the 16 boxes of case files, and decades of follow-up, no one has ever been charged. In 1990, a grand jury investigated the case. A prison inmate testified that he had witnessed Dee's abduction. He claimed to have seen her taken by a group connected to a local biker gang. But the testimony did not lead to arrests. In 2020, investigators searched a garage in Philadelphia based on a new tip. They found nothing. Sources say several of the original suspects have since died. Dolores Della Penna was laid to rest on August 4, 1972, following a mass at Our Lady of Consolation Church. She was buried at Resurrection Cemetery in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Her parents never recovered from their loss. They moved to Holmesburg in 1976 and recreated Dee's bedroom exactly as it had been on the day she was taken. Every year, on the anniversary of her death and on her birthday, they attended Mass and visited her grave. This ritual continued until Ralph's death in 2004 and Helen's in 2015. In 1973, the Eugene Alessandroni Lodge of the Order Sons of Italy established an annual scholarship in Dee's memory. It is awarded to an outstanding student at St. Hubert Catholic High School for Girls. Her parents attended the first ceremony. They wanted something good to come from their daughter's death. Several investigators who worked the case later admitted they were personally affected by the brutality of the murder and the fact that it remained unsolved. The case haunts Philadelphia to this day. Case 2. The murders of Kerry Graham and Francine Trimble. Kerry Ann Graham and Francine Marie Trimble were inseparable. They lived next door to each other in Forestville, California, a quiet town in Sonoma County. The two girls had been best friends since elementary school. Kerry was 15 years old, with light brown hair and a bright smile. She was just 4'9" in height. Francine was 14, slightly taller, with long hair and a free-spirited personality. The girls did everything together. They listened to records, talked about boys, and dreamed about the future. On Saturday, December 16, 1978, the two friends decided to go Christmas shopping. They told their families they were heading to Coddingtown Mall in nearby Santa Rosa to buy gifts. It was a holiday season. The mall would be crowded with shoppers. Kerry told her mother she would be home later that day. Francine left makeup arranged on her dresser, as if she planned to use it again that evening. Neither girl took anything with them that suggested they were running away. They simply left the house and never came back. Within 24 hours, Francine's mother reported her missing to the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. Kerry's mother waited until Christmas Eve to file a report. Some sources suggest Kerry had run away from home before, though she always returned after a short time. Police initially treated the case as a runaway situation. There was no sign of a struggle at the Trimble home where the girls were last seen, so investigators believed the two had simply decided to leave. But the families knew better. Francine and Kerry were close to their families, and they were excited about Christmas. They had no reason to run. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. There were no sightings, no phone calls, or letters. The girls had vanished. Then, on July 8, 1979, two men from Sacramento were driving along Highway 20 in Mendocino County, about 80 miles north of Forestville. They stopped near a creek to stretch their legs. One of them ventured down a steep embankment near James Creek. There, protruding from a shallow grave, was a human skull. The police were called immediately. A search of the area uncovered numerous skeletal remains belonging to two individuals. The bodies had been bound with duct tape, placed in plastic bags, and buried in shallow graves. Wild animals had scattered the bones across the site. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, the specific cause of death could not be determined, although investigators believe the victims may have been strangled. Both victims were estimated to be between 10 and 20 years old. No clothing was found with the remains, but a single shell earring depicting a bird was recovered at the scene. For over 36 years, the identities of the two victims remained a mystery. They were listed in databases as unidentified decedents. One was incorrectly classified as male due to errors in forensic analysis. Missing persons reports for Kerry and Francine listed conflicting dates of disappearance. Some records said the girls vanished in 1979, not 1978. The mistakes compounded over time. Then, in 2012, a BBC documentary about unidentified remains featured the case. Kelly Graham, Kerry's older sister, saw the program. She contacted authorities and insisted that one of the unidentified bodies might be her sister. DNA samples were obtained from family members of both girls and entered into national databases. In November 2015, 37 years after their disappearance, the remains were officially identified as Kerry Ann Graham and Francine Marie Trimble. The announcement brought closure to the families, but it also brought grief. For decades, they had held on to hope that the girls might still be alive. Now they knew the truth. Mendocino County Sheriff Tom Allman held a press conference. He told reporters that investigators were hoping someone out there knew something. He promised the case had not been forgotten. But by then, memories had faded. Many witnesses were gone. Time had eroded the trail. No definitive suspects have ever been named. Some have speculated that Kerry and Francine may have been victims of the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders, a series of unsolved killings in the area during the early 1970s. Others believe the girls were abducted by someone they knew, possibly before they even left for the mall. The makeup left on Francine's dresser suggests they intended to return home. The fact that they were found together, bound and buried, suggests they were targeted by someone with a plan. The case remains one of Mendocino County's oldest cold cases. The families continue to seek answers, They want justice. They want to know who took Kerry and Francine from them. But as the years pass, the chances of solving the case grow slimmer. Case 1. The murder of Carol Fitzmaurice. Carol Ann Manzo was born on May 14, 1947, in Cattaraugus County, New York. Her father, Gerald Manzo, was a decorated World War II hero who had served as an army medic on battlefields across Europe. He carried shrapnel in his body for the rest of his life, souvenirs of his service. Carol's mother, Catherine, was a devoted homemaker who raised Carol and her younger brother in a close-knit Italian-American family. The Manzos were well respected in their community. Carol grew up in the rural hills of western New York. She was a bright, kind young woman with dreams of helping others. After high school, she pursued nursing, a profession that allowed her to care for people in need. By 1968, at the age of 21, Carol had become a registered nurse. She worked in the office of Dr. F. Gerald Webster, an osteopath in Olean, New York. Patients loved her gentle bedside manner. That same year, Carol married Daniel Fitzmaurice, a young man 3 years her senior. Daniel came from a local contracting family and worked in the family business. The couple settled into a small ranch-style home on West 5 Mile Road in the town of Allegheny, just north of Olean. The house sat on a quiet country road that wound along the banks of 5 Mile Creek. The nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away. It was the kind of place where you could hear the wind in the trees and the creek babbling behind the house. It felt safe. It felt peaceful. On the morning of October 20, 1970, Carol went to work as usual. She spent the morning at Dr. Webster's office, tending to patients. Around noon, she left work and drove to Olean to have lunch. Afterward, she spent some time with her parents before heading home. It was a warm autumn day, and Carol arrived home in the early afternoon. She had plans to cook dinner for Daniel, who was working in Jamestown that day. She placed an uncooked chicken in the oven and began preparing the meal. Sometime that afternoon, someone came to the door. When Daniel Fitzmaurice arrived home around 6 o'clock that evening, he found his wife's body lying face up on the living room floor. Carol had been stabbed 14 times. The wounds were concentrated in her throat, abdomen, and upper body. There were clear signs of a struggle, indicating that Carol had fought back. She had defensive wounds on her hands and arms. But her attacker had been relentless, stabbing her again and again in a frenzied assault. The ferocity of the attack was shocking. It suggested rage, perhaps even a personal motive. Daniel immediately called the police. New York State police troopers arrived within minutes. They secured the scene and began their investigation. The uncooked chicken was still in the oven, exactly as Carol had left it. There was no sign of forced entry, and nothing appeared to have been stolen. The house was not ransacked. Whoever killed Carol Fitzmaurice had come to the door, been led inside, and attacked her without warning. Troopers began searching the area around the home. About 300 yards behind the house, they discovered a long-bladed carving knife in 5 Mile Creek. The blade was stained with blood. The handle had been wiped clean. Investigators believed this was the murder weapon, likely taken from the Fitzmaurice kitchen. Witnesses in the area provided a crucial lead. A woman who had been driving on West 5 Mile Road around the time of the murder reported seeing a man near the Fitzmaurice home. She described him as thin, about 6 feet tall, with narrow facial features. She also noticed a red or maroon car parked about 200 yards from the home, facing the wrong direction on the road. The man and the car were gone by the time the police arrived. Investigators immediately began interviewing everyone who knew Carol. They questioned her husband, her family, her co-workers, and her friends. Daniel Fitzmaurice was cleared as a suspect almost immediately. He had been working in Jamestown at the time of the murder, more than an hour away. Multiple witnesses confirmed his whereabouts. There were no signs of marital problems. By all accounts, Carol and Daniel had a happy marriage. Detectives followed every lead. They interviewed dozens of people, chased down tips, and brought in suspects for questioning. But nothing stuck. Carol Fitzmaurice had no known enemies. She was a nurse, a caregiver, someone who spent her days helping others. Why would anyone want to kill her? What was the motive? Was it a stranger who had been watching her? Was it someone she knew? The questions disturbed investigators. In the days after the murder, the community was gripped with fear. If someone could be murdered in their own home in the middle of the day in a place as quiet as Allegheny, then no one was safe. Parents kept their children close. Neighbors locked their doors. The murder of Carol Fitzmaurice shattered the illusion of rural safety. J. Thomas Stouffer was one of the lead investigators on the case. For more than 30 years, he worked to solve Carol's murder. Even after his retirement in 2012, Stouffer could not let go of the case. In interviews, he described it as one of the most haunting cases of his career. The ferocity of the attack, the lack of a clear motive, and the fact that the killer was never found all weighed on him. DNA evidence and fingerprints were collected at the scene in 1970. For decades, investigators hoped that advances in forensic science would provide a breakthrough. In 2015, senior investigator Julio Giardini took over the case with fresh eyes. He reviewed all the evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and submitted DNA samples for testing. But still, no match was found. 2 years after Carol's death, Daniel Fitzmaurice died in a motorcycle accident. He was only 29 years old. He was buried next to his wife in St. Bonaventure Cemetery. Carol's parents, Gerald and Catherine Manzo, never recovered from the loss of their daughter. They lived with the pain of not knowing who killed her or why. Catherine would occasionally run into investigators around town. They could see the grief etched into her face. One investigator said she looked like the life had been yanked out of her. Carol's younger brother still lives in the area. He has spent more than 50 years waiting for answers. The New York State Police have not given up. They continue to investigate. They continue to accept tips. They continue to hope that someone, somewhere, knows something. The case remains one of the oldest unsolved homicides in the New York State Police Troupe. A district, investigators believe the suspect, if still alive, would now be in their late 60s or 70s. They are hoping that with the passage of time, someone who may have been too afraid to speak up in 1970 will finally come forward. They are hoping that DNA technology will continue to improve. They are hoping that one day they can bring closure to Carol's family. Carol Ann Fitzmaurice was 23 years old when she was murdered. She was a nurse, a daughter, a sister, and a wife. She spent her life caring for others. She deserved to grow old, to have children, to watch grandchildren play in the yard of that quiet house on West 5 Mile Road. Instead, her life was stolen in a senseless act of violence that has never been explained. The case remains open. The investigation continues. And somewhere out there, someone knows the truth. Thank you for sticking around till the end. If you liked today's video, please give it a like and subscribe. It truly helps the channel and allows me to continue creating content like this. Thanks again for being here.